My name is Beth Rattner, and I'm the co-founder of Morpho Collective. I was the former executive director for the Biomimicry Institute, and what I was talking about today was biomimicry as an important design tool. I started as a lawyer, actually, not a designer, not a biologist, not a chemist. I went on to head organizations that were focused on biology and focused on chemistry and focused on design. And the reason I mentioned the lawyer part is because I think that our evolution in paying attention to how to make the world a better place started with education. And then we moved into regulation really quickly. It's like, okay, well, gosh, we probably can't control polluters. We probably can't control industry from doing bad things. So let's regulate them. First, Rachel Carson kind of alerted us to the fact that it was happening. And then regulators came on. There was, before 1963, Silent Spring was 1962. Before 1963, there were 5 pieces of legislation that the United States had related to any environmental thing, and 2 of them was like establishing national parks and the like. After that, we had Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, et cetera. So you had regulators kind of coming in and saying, I don't trust industry, and so now I'm going to basically stop you. And that actually spurred a huge amount of innovation just from having those new laws on the books. Years pass, and then you have circular economy. And I was part of that with Cradle to Cradle, where industry sort of recognized that we had $1 trillion that we were leaving on the table by not paying attention to how to take that jacket back and turn it into something new. Or, by the way, what's happening to your shoes when you're done with them? All of these big questions, and industry was actually recognizing that it was like there was a financial opportunity and incentive. That was a huge part of actually spurring a new round of innovation. Biomimicry has been part of that. But I think where we are now is recognizing that there is, whether regulation exists or whether economic incentive exists, there's like a moral imperative that exists of this is our planet. We're not going to Mars and living there anytime soon, despite, the popular press. So we actually have to be in co-partnership with nature. And this idea of a mutualism is so sort of new, that you can actually look at how nature has innovated, whether those designs are, how to actually create wrinkle-free without harmful chemicals, or actually how to insulate this building or create new structures. And we could actually be designing in a way that protects nature at the same time. That link is new. That's what's kind of surprising. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was a biomimic, and so it's been around. Buckminster Fuller was kind of a famous biomimic, but it hasn't been known by very many people outside of like the elites. The famous example of what biomimicry is that we all probably have right now is Velcro. It's this idea that, so there's 2 ways to invent according to like being inspired by nature. One is you study that area deeply. You're a naturalist, or maybe you actually study in particular like birds. And then you're like, oh, what could I make in industry that's like that? Or the other way to actually come to biomimicry is by thinking of a problem that you have. We have a lot of microplastics in our ocean. How does nature actually filter out plastic or filter out anything? And then you look at how the manta ray actually filters with its vortices in its own mouth, et cetera. So the 2 ways to go about it is either you got to find like an expert in the field, and you say, how can I actually translate that into a new product design or a new system design? Or you actually are going about it the other way around, which is like, we live in a time when climate is actually the number 1 issue, as is toxicity. So how are we finding ways to actually mitigate that? So you're now looking for inspiration in nature. So that's the what it means to me is that there's this library of ideas that for whatever reason humans haven't tapped into. I don't know if it's because we just thought that nature was this beautiful thing that we were supposed to appreciate but we weren't supposed to learn from, or if it's because in classic engineering and physics and the like, we sort of learn from other humans better than we learn from animals or insects. But I think that's changing. One of the exercises that we do in biomimicry is we have you go to a park or go out into a field and pick one organism. It could be an ant, it could be a leaf of grass, or a blade of grass, it doesn't really matter. And you're supposed to draw it for 20 minutes. That, it doesn't sound hard, but after about 3 minutes, people are pretty bored and tired, and their attention span is waned, exactly for the reasons that you just said. And by forcing people to stay at it for 20 minutes, it becomes a meditation. Like, it wasn't intended to be so, but it becomes a meditation. How does that blade of grass stand up? What's feeding it? What is it doing actually in the part of the broader ecosystem? And by paying attention to that, then they have to draw it out and actually identify those different functions that they're seeing performed. It's a game changer for people. And all of a sudden, when kids do it, like, they get it instantly. They actually have a much better attention span than adults, which may surprise you. And what happens in return is the kids then become like, they start to see those functions everywhere. They're like, Dad, look at that seed pod. Do you know that means it can float on the wind for 2 miles without, any help at all? And that sparks a curiosity. And I actually, I wanted to say this in the talk, and I didn't get to it, but which is, I think that this deep sadness that kids have today, or people have today, is from that disconnect to nature. And one of the things that they say, like, 2 things make you happy, right? These are sort of like classically published stories. One is helping other people. The second one is being forever curious. And I think that bioinspired design meets both of those things. Like, you're creating something that's going to help somebody. And we saw this, like, 12-year-old boys out of Hawaii. They're like, the best part about this project was we got to help people. Because they wanted to create, they were worried about the super hot heat impact on buildings. And so they were looking at how the Saharan silver ant reflects heat. And they were designing roofing tiles based upon that structure. So if you stay in that space of, I want to actually help somebody with my design, and I'm really curious about how the natural world works, you're going to be happy till the day you die. And it's an endless source of inspiration.